Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to talk about the nature of information consumption and the theory or my understanding of information diet. Now, my understanding is that we have a particular information diet that's very much analogous to a food diet. I'm not the first one to notice this. This analogy seems to run quite deep. So, for instance, I look at my information diet and go, okay, am I consuming the right kind of information in the same way as am I consuming the right kind of food? What I mean by that is that am I consuming high quality information, things like audiobooks versus the YouTube, some of the worst excesses of YouTube. Obviously, the worst excesses of YouTube are the junk information, the fast food of information, and the audiobooks, high quality audiobooks by people like say Thomas Sowell, are the high quality stuff. And a lot of podcasts are somewhere in between. There's some very, very high quality podcasts and ones that maybe are more sort of for consumption rather than for learning. There's other forms, obviously, of information consumption, but basically you get the point is that you get the quality information we think about, then the quantity of information that we consume. I think you can definitely overload. I really try and think that we should take a break every now and again, like a timed break for information. And so quality, quantity. The last one is the format. So for most people, for me, a lot of the time, a lot of it's audiobooks, like audio material. Is it visual, like audio-visual stuff like this, which is quite addictive, but also a very good way of transmitting information. Obviously, is it reading? So I think and is it also sometimes IRL, like real life stuff, whether it's talking to people, whether it's getting out in the world. So obviously, we need to try and make sure we get a blend of that. Exactly, that's very similar to how you would do with food, a blend of information consumption. Now, the analogy actually extends a little bit further because the green revolution, agricultural revolution, which I can't even, it was some time ago, I think about 100 years or over 100 years ago, the mechanization of agriculture and then the sort of urbanization due to that was, I believe that was pre-industrial revolution, but don't quote me on that. That really feels like that was a precursor for food, right? So we went from having sparse food to suddenly we have enough food and even more food than we need. Very similar to the internet. You go from a situation where you have a sparse amount of information and the whole point is about getting enough. And you assume the information is reasonably high quality because it is usually quite good. You've got to go to a library to get your stuff. You assume those books are reasonable. They're out of date, but they're not junk information. Whereas nowadays we have almost this, like similar to a green revolution, we have enormous amounts of information. Some of it's exceptionally high quality, some of it's exceptionally low quality, and sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference between the two. One of the analogous things, so it's very similar to that food thing. So a green revolution, information revolution, mechanization of farming, siliconization of information. The other thing I guess I'd say is that both have these. I think the junk food phenomenon is a really important part to understand. That once you get to that point where you have excesses, then discipline comes into it. Because suddenly everybody, like when information is democratized, everybody can have that information. But if everybody can have it, then what is the deciding factor as who wins? Well, it's discipline, right? It's who has the capacity to not consume the wrong information, capacity to consume the right information. So if everybody has access to it, then it's those people who are making the right choices. But paradoxically, information consumption makes you make the right choices. So this is one of those moments where it's like, just a second, this is actually a spiral up or a spiral down. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy to some extent. So if you have the right information, you'll tend to make the right choices about how to consume information. It's like a meta-knowledge. You have the wrong information, it'll tend to make you more emotional, and then you'll consume more and more of the worst information and kind of trapped in that cycle. So I think the important thing just to be aware of is there is this thing that's going on. And Tristan Harris put this really aptly, where he says something along the lines of, at the other side of that social media site, there's 1,000 engineers whose job it is to make sure you click on that link. If you understand that, you understand why it's so difficult to not do that, because they're trying to really directly appeal to that part of your brain that deals with that kind of stuff. I guess classically we call it the brainstem, but I don't know if that's actually true, the right nomenclature. So in the same way that a fast food restaurant is driving towards palatability, the algorithms of the internet are tending to drive you towards greater and greater consumption. I think that in some way I look at those algorithms almost like the food preparation, like the sauce kind of thing, or the way it's cooked. That's probably taken a little bit far, but it's with spices. So it's a way of presenting the food, the information slash food, in a certain way. So at Hungry Jack's or McDonald's or something, the food is what it is, but then it gets presented in a certain way and the sauce gets put on it. And that adds that extra amount of palatability. And I do think that when you think about Facebook and YouTube and all the other kind of social media apps, what they can do, they kind of put that extra dressing on it, they kind of put the sauce on it, presented in that fast food kind of way. They give that extra layer that makes it even more palatable, so you end up over-consuming potentially, and especially the wrong kind of information. So I think the internet is our greatest achievement, but it's also perhaps our greatest threat for various reasons. But it is necessary, and it's a natural form of human evolution. To make sense of that, I think, is really the difference between achieving everything you want with your mind and not. So, all right, well, thanks for listening, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.